Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Ray. This is my craft room and today I'm going to be doing a couple of cards for Riverside Crafts. I'll show you, I'm just going to move my camera so that you can see what I'm doing. Now here are the two cards. So we've got Mr. Gnome and the Mushroom. I really like the Toadstools. So the stamps are from Woodware and I'm going to be using 3 sets. I'm going to use sentiments from a different one today. So that's the Toadstools and they're by Jane Gill. And then we have this lovely one, which is a Toadstool and a gnome one. And I'm going to be using the sentiment from there. And then there's the 3 gnomes. I've cheated a little bit with these because I've actually cut and split mine so that I could have them individual, so I wasn't having to mask out everything all the time. So I'll start off with stamping on the card so you can see how I do that. I always use a stamping platform because it's just so much easier and I get such a better finish. I'm using a pre-made card blank today. This is 5x5. So I'm just going to put my little magnets on, leave it a little bit away because I want to be able to get the stamp right up to the edge. I'm going to lay my stamp where I want it to go and line it up. And then hold on to it there. Now the ink that I'm using is Riverside Clair because it gives a nice detailed image. Also I'm going to be using watercolour distress inks to colour my image. So using a Riverside Clair, which is a permanent ink, means that it's not going to smudge for me. Okay, and that's my image done for that. Now I'll show you how I do my tag as well while I've got that one in. So for my mushroom tag, I actually I don't want the whole of that in there, but I want it on the base. So I'm going to just position it where I think, and then I'm going to ink it up because I only want a part of the actual image for the actual tag. So, and that's how I've done my tag. Okay, now my tags measure, I can tell you exactly because I've got it written down somewhere wherever I put it. Here we go. Tags are 9.5 centimeters by 6.5 centimeters, and the backing piece is 10 centimeters by 7, so that they will sit one on top of the other for mat and layering. Okay, so let me get my gnomes. I'm going to use this one today. He's obviously been pre-stamped just so I don't get in quite such a mess. I'm going to be using a selection of distress inks, but the first thing we're going to do is sky. I'm going to be using Stormy Sky to do this. Now this is the wet into wet technique, which means I have the card wet before I put the colour down. So I'm going to be careful and go all the way around. Oh, mucky brush, never mind. You can see where the water is probably better because my brush is slightly mucky. I'm not very good at cleaning things. At least we've got the sunshine today. It does make it feel a bit more like we're having things are happening, doesn't it? Okay, now I'm going to pick up some ink and just start to drop it in where I want it. Because I've put the water down, it won't actually bleed into him. It will literally just go around the edge, and I can leave like a halo of blue around my little gnome here, because the ink will only go where there is already water. Okay, but what it does, it gives you this really quite nice bleed out, which makes quite a nice sky and gives you a bit more of a feeling that it's sort of nice and gentle. Okay, so I'm just putting it in where I want it, dropping it in, letting it move around a bit, put a little bit more closer to him, just dropping it on. Okay, and that will do that bit for a minute, and I'm just going to dry him off so you can see what I mean. Now if you're all writing on there for comments, I'm ever so sorry, but I can't actually see you because my phone is upside down at the moment, and it's doing all the recording for me, so I will hopefully answer any questions when I've finished, if that's all right with you. Okay, Now you can see you get this quite a nice sort of mottledy loose sky, which is really pretty and gives you a nice feeling for who he is when you get done. So here we go, just one pre-done. I'm a bit Blue Peterish today, trying to get myself organised. Right, the first thing I'm going to do is his face and his nose, and I'm going to use dried marigold and a little tiny bit, and I do mean a very tiny bit, of aged mahogany, just so his nose looks like it's got a little bit of pink on it, and that is just nice and warm. Now I use quite a small paintbrush when I'm doing this, so that I'm not sort of getting too much everywhere. Okay, and my watercolour cardstock is Crafter's Companions one, so it's what we have at the shop there to use. And because I'm painting this quite loosely, I'm not worried about the detail. If I was going to be painting it with lots and lots of detail in it, then I would be looking at using the Langtons. But at the moment, the sort of watercolour painting that I'm doing, particularly today, it's not needed. It's quite nice to do something that's a bit looser and a bit quicker. No, because you don't always want to spend absolutely ages on your cards. Right, so that's just that bit nicely done. Now I'm going to do his beard, but I'm going to leave that until his nose and hands are dry. So I'm going to do his trousers now, because that's furthest away and less likely to make a mess with. And I'm going to do those in Forest Moss, which is a nice dark green. Okay, I'm just going to put that in there. Ooh, here it goes. Get it everywhere. There we go. So let's put his trousers on him. Okay, now we can do his hat, and I tend to do gnomes with red hats. I don't know if that's just because that's how I think of them, or if it's a traditional thing, I'm not sure. So I'm just going to put a bit of red in. And as you can see, it's quite quick how I paint these. I don't take ages. It's very loosely done. It's not meant to be extra neat or tidy. And that you can put a bit of shading in, but just dropping a bit more colour where you think it wants to be, make it look a bit darker. Okay, so that's done that bit for a minute. Right, we'll do his beard, and that's in pumice stone. Okay. If the dog suddenly starts barking, I do apologise. It's because my husband's busy working outside and he thinks he should be there as well. Just going to put a little bit more red down with a touch of grey in it up here to give a little bit of shadow. A little bit more red there. Right, now I'm going to do his shoes, and I used gathered twigs to do his shoes. So she's a browny colour, which works quite well. Okay, so that's quite good. Now we're just going to do the the heart that he's holding. If you notice, I don't necessarily paint directly next to something else. I tend to let the paint move itself a bit, the ink. I tend not to try and put it on top of whatever it is on top of, so it's not gonna sort of do too much pushing and pulling around. We've got his hat to have a patch on. I think we'll have a green patch on his hat. There we go. A bit more red up here. I think I just need a little bit more shadow on his hat. He seems to have lost it a little bit, so I'm going to put a little bit of the aged mahogany onto the creases here. Okay. Right, now he's floating at the moment in midair, which is not the best of things to be doing with your stamps. So my last little bit I'm going to do is the ground that he stood on. And I'm just going to use a little bit of Twisted Citron for that, because it's a nice bright green. It just brings it up to life. And I'm just going to drag it across the base of it. Again, quite loosely. I'm not looking at it being perfect. I don't necessarily want it to look absolutely perfect. I wouldn't quite like little gaps and holes in it when it's like this, because it's just a nice little topper. Right, so let him dry, and while he's drying I will do some toadstools with you. So here's the toadstools. Okay, now on my toadstools I did them with the dark purple, a lot of them, because it looks quite nice. Oh, I'm trying to get the inks out. Here we go. So I've used Dusty Concord, which I'm going to put down now on here, because I know I'm going to be using it on the focal one in the middle. Now I'm going to dry my brush a little bit before I put the ink up on this, because I want this to be quite a dark purple to go down. I don't want it all wishy-washy too quickly, so I'm trying to put quite a bit of colour on quite quickly, just to get me some nice darker pieces along one edge. Okay, now when I was taught to paint, I was always told you do red last, because red is the worst colour to take off of anything. But that's not necessarily, because you get everywhere else perfectly painted and then you make a mess on the red. It sort of makes you all feel a bit like you shouldn't have been doing it. There we go, there's one done in purple. Okay, and we'll have a couple of grey ones. See, it's quite quick doing it like this. It doesn't take as long as you think you're going to be. I'm just going to put a little bit of brown coming down here on these toadstools for the bases. There we go. Drag it down a bit. When the brown has dried, I shall go over the top with the grey, just to give it a bit more of a darker colour. Okay, right, so here's the grey going back on top, and you can see it just changes it slightly. There we go. So inks will mix quite nicely. One of the good things about distress inks, they will mess around for you quite happily. Right, I'm going to use the same red as I did last time. So this again is Candied Apple. It's a nice bright red. It's a brilliant red, which is very good for what we're doing. Now, painting red toadstools with white dots is one of those things where you do it definitely going in on dry card. You don't want any water around, so your background wants to be well and truly dry, because if you start messing around with it and get it everywhere wet, it will bleed and you'll lose your white dots. So make sure that everything else that's around what you're painting is dry. Okay. coming in again, put a little bit down. Don't be afraid to build the colour up. You know, it's easier to put more on than it is to take it off. So, you know, take your time and don't worry too much about getting too much colour on it. Okay. Now, there is a little secret. If you go over where you don't want the red to be, a white gel pen can sort of save the day for you. Or a ball tool with a tiny bit of white acrylic paint on it will help as well. So you can actually paint your white dots back if you need to, but you're better off using a ball tool to pick the colour up to do it, because it will hold it better. And it will give you that nice circular shape, which is what you're looking for. So we're getting there now, aren't we? A bit more red at the top of there. Right, we've got some leaves to paint in, and I shall use my bright green, so the Twisted Citron. Can paint in these leaves quite quickly. Right. How many of you are looking forward to getting your jabs and things going back to normal? Do you think they will? How quickly it's all going to change for us? Okay, a little bit for the flowers. I'll use a little bit of the yellowy one we've got, which is marigold. Take that around the edges of them, or in the middle. How's that? Right, so that's quite quickly and loosely done. Now, one of the things I do like to do now that my gnome is dry is what I call grounding. So I'm going to use my black Pigma micro pen, and I'm just going to do a few sort of ziggy-zaggy lines on either side of him, and just makes him look like he's meant to be there. Okay, so to make my tag, okay, now obviously I take the corners off, as you can see on the one there. I take my corners off. So what I do is, with my scissors, is I take one corner how I think I want it to go, then I pick that corner up, sit it on the other side, line it up, and it gives me, and then I match up to that one, and I've got perfectly matching side pieces then, so it doesn't go all wonky on me. I don't spend forever cutting back and getting nowhere. A little bit of glue, my favourite glue this is at the moment, which is Pinfez Bookbinders glue. Okay, I'll put that down there quite nicely. Get it square if possible. Doesn't always work. Okay, now I'm going to just trim off those corners. Okay, And use my crocodile to put my hole in the top. So that's my tag now created. Stick it down, come on, glue, thank you. Right, so to complete the card, I need a strip. If you can see, I've got a strip of paper. Well, that paper is from this paper pack, which is absolutely gorgeous. It's the Bumblebee's Dance, and you've got some really pretty papers in here. Look at these, with bumblebees and dots and checks. And I've used a piece off one of these as my strip. It's quite a busy paper, but as a strip going across underneath something, it works really well. So tidy up a bit. Here's my strip, which I'm going to glue in place. Okay. And it's literally just going to go along and underneath my toadstools that I've put on. It might help level it up if I'm having problems with that. If I didn't get it on square, this is where I can hide those bits that aren't quite right if I need to. Trim off my excess. And my little black dots are not gems. These are the waste from a die, because it cuts out line little circles for me. And often when we're posting through now, we can't really put lots of gems and things on because it's starting to get too expensive with the cards, because they don't go through their little, they charge you, don't they? So I collect these up from when I've been dyeing and cutting, and I've got a little pot with loads of different colours in, and I just literally put a dab of glue on the end. Okay, put that down. I'm going to put more glue under that corner. It doesn't want to hold. Probably the card's still too wet from earlier. A little bit of twine. So please, Caroline, got me some more of that because I was running low. And I get through so much twine, you wouldn't believe. You really wouldn't. Okay, so I've done that bit. Now I need my 3D foam pads just to go on the back of here to help lift up so it looks nice. There we go. Got them screwed up in the back. Okay, take the bit off the back of them. There we are. And I'm just going to sit it on at an angle. There we go. There he is, sat there. I'm going to trim off a little bit of my excess here because I've got a little bit more than I need really. I'll just take a bit extra off. And I've got my sentiment now. To make my sentiment look a little bit more interesting, I've taken my black Micron pigment pen, and I've just put a row of faux stitching along one edge, a double line, so it looks like it's been sewn into the cardstock. Again, foam pads on the back to raise it up off of the. Now I've stamped on the same watercolour card as I have been painting on so that it blends with any bits that haven't actually been bought in to keep it all nice and neat. So there is my finished card. That's the way around that I would do that one. I hope you like it. So there we go. Here's them all finished. So you can see these are the sentiments that I was telling you about off the stamp sets and bits, and I hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye, and I'll see you again another day.